You always thought pyramids were tombs. But then someone said they were power plants. And someone else said they were grain silos. One man in a YouTube comment thread insisted very confidently they were giant ice boxes for the gods. Tonight, we gently walk through every theory, slowly, sleepily, with the patience of a camel chewing papyrus. You may not find the truth, but you will definitely forget what the question was. Welcome to the weird, wonderful, and wildly wrong theories of the Egyptian pyramids. They weren't just tombs. Or were they? You begin your journey inside a very large triangle. It smells like stone and time. You've always heard that the pyramids were tombs. Everyone says it. Tour guides, textbooks, t-shirts in Giza. But the deeper you go, the quieter it gets. And the more the question begins to whisper, what if they weren't? Let's start at the beginning. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built for Pharaoh Khufu, also known by his Greek name Cheops. Around 2560 BCE, give or take a lunch break. It stood 146 meters tall, the tallest man-made structure on Earth for the next 3,800 years. That's longer than your neighbor's houseplants have lived. Much longer. It was made of about 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing around 2 to 15 tons. That's roughly the weight of 4 hippos or 1,000 Netflix subscriptions, depending on how you measure things. But here's the strange part. Inside this massive tomb, there is no sarcophagus in the traditional sense. No mummified king, no treasure. Not even a polite thank you note from the afterlife. Yes, there is a granite box in the so-called king's chamber. It's too big to fit through the entrance, so it must have been placed there during construction, which is inconvenient, unless you're building something for eternity. But when Al-Mamun, the caliph who dug his way in during the 800s, finally reached the chamber, he found it empty. No mummy, no gold, just echoes. Was it looted? Possibly. But there were no signs of forced entry before Al-Mamun. No evidence of smashed walls or broken seals. Just nothing. And that's when the theories began. Because an empty tomb is like an unopened envelope. It could mean anything. Maybe it was always meant to be empty. Maybe Khufu changed his mind. Maybe the pyramid was never a tomb. Maybe it was a message, a machine, a refrigerator. You don't know, and you don't have to. You're not here to find the truth. You're here to be gently overwhelmed by how many possibilities a single triangle can hold. So breathe in. Let the stone press around you like an ancient blanket. We're just getting started. The Grain Theory, Joseph and the Pyramid Pantry. You are now standing in the desert, next to a structure made of stone that once held, according to some, a very large amount of wheat. Not treasure, not scrolls, not ancient secrets, just grain. It begins, as many strange theories do, with a story from the Bible. Genesis, chapter 41. There was famine in Egypt. 7 years of plenty, 7 years of hunger. Joseph, the dream interpreter, was made vizier of Egypt by Pharaoh and told to store food. "Gather all the food of those good years," he said, "and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh." Where did they store it? In pyramids? That part was never specified. But some early historians thought, well, they're big and empty. Why not? In the 5th century, the Greek historian Herodotus visited Egypt. He said the pyramids were built by slaves. He was wrong. Later, medieval Islamic scholars, lacking detailed archaeological records, believed the pyramids were granaries, including al-Masui, who suggested the Great Pyramid was full of grain, ready for the apocalypse. When Napoleon Bonaparte arrived in Egypt in 1798, he brought not just cannons, but scientists. One French engineer, Charles-Joseph Savorin, wrote in his diary that the pyramids might be colossal silos. He had no proof, but he wore a very nice hat. The theory gained traction because it's very human to look at something we don't understand and think, could we put food in it? But then came the problems. Pyramids are not airtight. Grain needs to be ventilated and dry. There are no loading docks, no chutes, no evidence of grain residue, nor mouse bones. Still, the idea persisted, because people love metaphors. And what better metaphor than a giant triangle storing hope for when the sky goes empty? Some Christian archaeologists continued to argue the case well into the 20th century. They believed Joseph's granaries had to be real, and the pyramid too mysterious to ignore. In 1924, a man named David Davidson published a book called The Great Pyramid, Its Divine Message. In it, he claimed the pyramid was not just a granary, but also a mathematical prophecy. Each inch of the pyramid, he said, represented a year in human history. And somehow, the granary became a calendar, and then a clock, and then something else entirely. But back to grain. If the pyramid had ever been filled with wheat, someone forgot to sweep up. Not a single kernel has been found. And yet, even now, some still believe. Because sometimes a good story is more satisfying than a good reason. And it helps you sleep, like warm bread, on a stone bed, under a sky made of dust and dreams. The star map, Orion, Osiris, and overthinking it. You look up, into the sky above Giza. There, 3 stars, Alnitak, Al-Nilam, Mentaka. Together, they form the Orion's belt. And down below, 3 pyramids, almost aligned. Coincidence? That depends on how much sleep you've had, and how many documentaries narrated by echoing British voices you've watched this week. The theory goes like this. The 3 pyramids of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure are laid out on the desert floor to mirror the 3 belt stars of Orion. A stellar map on Earth. An ancient sky carved in stone. It was first proposed by Robert Bauval in 1983. He wasn't an archaeologist. He was an engineer. But he noticed that if you squint at a star chart and tilt your head slightly and use a bit of imagination, it kind of matches. The largest pyramid, Khufu, aligns with Alnitak, the brightest star. The smallest, Menkaure, is offset slightly, just like Mintaka. Even the Nile River, Bauval said, might represent the Milky Way. It's poetic. It's elegant. It's also hard to prove. Egyptian texts don't mention Orion's belt, not directly. But they do revere Orion. To the ancient Egyptians, Orion was the god Osiris, lord of the underworld, resurrected king, husband of Isis, father of Horus. Osiris traveled through the night sky and was reborn each morning as the sun rose in the east. Some believe the pyramids were built to help the soul of the pharaoh ascend into the stars, to become one with Osiris. That's a beautiful thought, even if the pharaoh never saw a telescope. In the pyramid texts, some of the oldest religious writings in history, pharaohs are told, "You are now the star that lives forever." There is longing in those lines, and silence, and sky. Could it be that the pyramids were cosmic launch pads? Did they mirror Orion by design? Or did someone just really like triangles? The problem, you see, is that sand shifts, maps change, and the stars drift. A phenomenon called precession means that what Orion looked like in 2500 BCE is slightly different from how it looks now. So any alignment is a bit blurry. But still, the theory glows softly in the background, like starlight behind a thin cloud. And as your eyes begin to close, you imagine the pharaoh lying in his stone chamber, whispering to the sky, "I am Osiris now." And Orion listens and doesn't disagree. The calendar clock, counting time with rocks. You wake up in a desert where the shadows tell time. Not with numbers, not with ticking hands, but with stones, arranged carefully, silently, patiently. The Great Pyramid of Giza, massive, motionless, might be the world's oldest calendar, or a clock, or both. A cosmic post-it note scribbled in limestone. Let's start with the basics. The pyramid is perfectly aligned. Its sides face true north, south, east, and west, with astonishing precision. So precise that modern surveyors still argue how ancient builders did it without compasses, lasers, or spirit levels. One theory, they watched the stars for a very long time. Because if you have no TV, you look up. The corners of the pyramid form a near-perfect square, and each side measures about 230 meters long. And here's where it gets numerical. The height of the Great Pyramid, when multiplied by 43,200, equals the polar radius of Earth in meters. The base perimeter, multiplied by the same number, equals the equatorial circumference. Some say coincidence. Others say ancient geodesy. Still others say, who's multiplying pyramids this late at night? There's more. The slope of the pyramid sides matches the tangent of pi. Or maybe phi. Depends on who you ask and how tired they are. Some researchers believe that the pyramid structure encoded the length of the solar year, 365.24 days. Not bad for a civilization that counted with pebbles and reed pens. The orientation of the pyramid means that on the summer solstice, the sun sets precisely between the two largest pyramids, Khufu and Khafre, when viewed from the Sphinx. Coincidence? Or calendar? A man named Edward Malkowski once suggested that the pyramid is a giant timepiece, tracking solstices, equinoxes, and the slow wobble of Earth's axis, called precession. A full precessional cycle takes 25,900 years. Divide that by 360, and you get 72. And what's 72? That's the number of steps in some ancient Egyptian rituals. Or maybe just the number of seconds you've spent thinking about that sentence. But the point is, these rocks might be smarter than they look. And still, there's no instruction manual. No hieroglyph that says, set clock forward 1 hour in spring. No dial, no snooze button. Just geometry and gravity and guesses. So, maybe the pyramid isn't a clock you can read. Maybe it's a clock you feel. Tick. A shadow moves. Tock. A solstice arrives. And somewhere in the stone, time continues without ever making a sound. The power plant. Tesla would be confused. Imagine this. You walk into a pyramid and accidentally charge your phone. No cable, no outlet, just ancient energy. Welcome to the theory that says the Great Pyramid was a power plant. It begins, as many strange ideas do, with a man named Christopher Dunn. He wrote a book in 1998, The Giza Power Plant, Technologies of Ancient Egypt. In it, he proposed something bold. That the pyramid wasn't built to honor the dead, but to generate vibrational energy from the earth itself. Yes, a Tesla-style wireless energy tower, 2,000 years before Tesla, and about 4,000 years before your Wi-Fi password stopped working. Dunn believed the pyramid was a resonance chamber. He pointed to the use of granite, which contains quartz, a crystal that vibrates when compressed. He suggested the Earth's movements created vibrations that traveled through underground water channels beneath the pyramid. Those vibrations would cause the granite chambers to hum at a precise frequency. And that frequency could be harnessed. To do what? That part's a little vague. Still, the idea is intriguing. The Great Pyramid contains 3 known chambers: the King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, and the Subterranean Chamber, each with very specific acoustic properties. Sound experiments have shown that the King's Chamber amplifies resonance. Some say it echoes like a cathedral. Others say it hums like an empty stomach after a long walk in the sand. Dunn proposed that chemicals were placed in the Queen's Chamber, possibly hydrated zinc and hydrochloric acid. Combined, these would produce hydrogen gas, which would then rise into the King's Chamber, the granite resonance zone, and become super-energized. Boom! Energy. Sort of. There is, unfortunately, no trace of zinc, or acid, or instruction manuals marked Ancient Egyptian Reactor, Handle with Care. But the idea still lingers in late-night corners of the internet, because it's thrilling to imagine a civilization so advanced they could pull power from the planet without coal, wires, or taxes. Nikola Tesla himself believed in wireless energy. He built his Warden Cliff Tower in the early 1900s, hoping to send electricity through the air. He failed, mostly due to bankruptcy, and the fact that his investors were hoping for profits, not lightning bolts. But what if the Egyptians figured it out first? There's no evidence, just granite, geometry, and the quiet hum of a theory that refuses to die. So the next time you stand near a pyramid, and your hair tingles ever so slightly, maybe it's static. Maybe it's wind, or maybe you're charging. The fridge hypothesis for very large snacks. You've heard many theories: power plants, star maps, grain silos. But tonight's idea is deliciously absurd. What if the Great Pyramid was a refrigerator? Yes, a fridge for the gods. A sacred triangle-shaped appliance to keep divine hummus cool during long summer afternoons. The logic, if you can call it that, begins with temperature. Inside the Great Pyramid, it's noticeably cooler than outside. In the baking sun of the Egyptian plateau, where daytime temperatures climb above 40 degrees, the interior remains around 20 degrees. A comfortable, tomb-like chill. To some, proof of ancient refrigeration. To others, just shade. But theories do not cool easily. Supporters point to the pyramid's insulation. Massive limestone blocks, no windows, narrow corridors, all of which help maintain a stable internal climate, just like your kitchen fridge. A few go further, much further. They imagine the Queen's Chamber as a storage room for perishable offerings, figs, bread, possibly yak butter. Never mind that yak don't live in Egypt. Some claim the subterranean chamber was a cooling sink, where cold air circulated from the bedrock and rose through the pyramid's internal shafts, like a prehistoric air conditioner, or a very confused breeze. Then comes the pièce de résistance, the ventilation shafts. These narrow-angled tubes rise from the king's and queen's chambers and reach toward the pyramid's exterior. Archaeologists say they may have served religious or symbolic purposes, aligning with stars like Orion and Sirius. But the fridge theorists say ventilation, airflow, cold pizza preservation. Of course, this theory has challenges. There's no evidence of food storage, no shelves, no hieroglyphs that read, "Do not store fish above divine cheese." And perhaps most obviously, no ice. Egypt, famously, is not known for its glaciers. But the human mind, when faced with a mystery, loves a familiar solution. And what's more familiar than a fridge? A humming, boxy vault that holds comfort, leftovers, and possibly enlightenment. So perhaps the pyramid wasn't a tomb or a machine. Maybe it was a cosmic lunchbox, a sacred snack station, a temple of eternal cold cuts. And if the gods were ever hungry, they at least had a place to keep the hummus fresh. The Alien Blueprint. Architects from Alpha Centauri. You look up at the Great Pyramid, and something inside you whispers, "No way humans built that." It's too perfect, too big, too pointy. Which brings us to the most popular and least archaeological theory of them all: aliens. The extraterrestrial explanation has survived for decades. Books, TV shows, websites with black backgrounds and neon fonts, all asking the same question: what if they didn't build it alone? The idea was popularized by Erich von Däniken, a Swiss hotel manager turned best-selling author. In 1968, he published Chariots of the Gods, a book that asked questions like, did ancient people have contact with extraterrestrials? Were the gods actually astronauts? And, can I turn this theory into a movie franchise? Von Däniken pointed to several things: the massive size of the stones, the mathematical precision, the lack of construction records, the mysterious shafts, the empty chambers, the vibe. He argued that the Egyptians couldn't have done it alone, that alien visitors, possibly from Sirius, Orion, or Alpha Centauri, shared advanced technology: lasers, anti-gravity, hovering tractor beams. You know, classic pyramid tools. But here's the thing: ancient Egyptians actually left records. Wall carvings, tombs, paintings. None of them feature little green men. No flying saucers. No blueprints written in Martian. What we do see: human workers, sleds, ropes, levers, sand, and sore backs. Excavations at worker villages near Giza showed evidence of organized labor. Bakeries, tool shops, sleeping quarters. Bones showed signs of arthritis from hauling stone blocks. Not laser beams, just labor. Still, the alien theory clings like desert dust, because it's easier, sometimes, to imagine miracles than to admire muscles. To some, the aliens are flattering, proof that ancient people were visited by higher beings. To others, it's disrespect, a way of saying, these brown-skinned builders couldn't have done this. Someone must have helped. But the stones remain, stacked, measured, built by hands and dreams and a lot of sore feet. And if aliens did come, they must have been terrible at documentation. No manuals, no farewell note, not even a forgotten ray gun under the sand. Just stones
and silence, and the quiet knowledge that maybe humans, after all, were capable of more than we give them credit for.
The water pump. Pyramid plumbing for pharaohs. You feel a drop of water, which is strange because you're standing in the desert. But deep beneath the Great Pyramid, someone once heard gurgling, and a new theory was born. What if the pyramid wasn't a tomb, or a power plant, or a divine fridge, but a giant hydraulic pump? This idea came to life in the late 20th century with a man named Edward Kunkel. He was a construction engineer with a love for plumbing and mysteries. In 1962, he published Pharaoh's Pump. It wasn't a bestseller, but it made a splash. Kunkel believed the Great Pyramid functioned as a water-lifting machine, a kind of prehistoric pressure pump. He proposed that water from the nearby Nile was channeled underground into the pyramid's base. That water, rising into chambers, created hydraulic pressure to move water upward. To what end? Irrigation? Cooling? Possibly some sort of Nile-based elevator. He pointed to the so-called subterranean chamber, a rough, unfinished room beneath the pyramid. It sits 27 meters below ground. It contains a carved pit and what looks suspiciously like a drain. No decorations, no sarcophagus, just rock and emptiness. Kunkel argued this chamber was a cistern, a holding tank. The Grand Gallery, a pressure chamber. The Queen's Chamber, a bypass valve. To a plumber, everything looks like plumbing. But there are some problems. There's no evidence of piping, no seals, no wear from flowing water. And the Nile has changed course many times over the past 4,500 years. So where exactly was the intake valve? Supporters of the theory say it explains why the pyramid has so many sealed shafts, strange corridors, and sudden dead ends. They weren't tomb traps. They were valves, or vents, or overflow tunnels. Still, mainstream archaeologists gently point to reality. The pyramid was not watertight. There is no infrastructure to move liquid upward. Also, ancient Egypt had buckets and shadufs and plenty of sun. If they needed water higher up, they used people. But the image lingers. A pyramid pulsing with pressure, gurgling like a granite stomach, rising and falling with the heartbeat of the Nile. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe it's right. Maybe the real pressure was just curiosity building up for 4,000 years with no release valve in sight.
The sonic device, built with sound, not logic. You step inside the king's chamber, and the air feels heavy. You speak a single word. It bounces off the granite and comes back stronger, deeper, wider. Some say that's just acoustics. Others say that's technology. Tonight's theory suggests that the pyramid was not built with hammers and levers, but with sound. Not the kind that wakes you up, the kind that moves stone. Let's begin with a frequency, 432 Hertz, known by some as the God frequency, believed by others to be just a number. But to followers of this theory, sound is sacred, and ancient builders knew its power. They believe the king's chamber was a resonating box, designed to amplify specific tones. Some visitors say they can feel vibrations through the floor, the walls, even their bones. A hum, a pulse, like the pyramid is alive. These theorists point to materials, granite filled with quartz crystals, which vibrate under pressure. They say it's no accident that the builders knew how to tune the stone. Even the dimensions of the chamber are said to be harmonically perfect, ratios that mirror musical intervals, frequencies that align with Earth's natural rhythms. They claim that by chanting or drumming or playing ancient instruments, you could cause the stones to levitate, float, slide, lock into place, as if whispered there. Is there evidence for this? Not really. But ancient cultures everywhere spoke of sacred sound. In Tibet, monks used overtone singing to create sonic effects. In India, temples were designed to sing back. Even today, modern engineers use sound to manipulate particles. Tiny ones, not limestone blocks, but still. What if the ancients knew more than we think? Not with computers, but with ears and mouths and silence. Because maybe the pyramid wasn't built with sound. Maybe it was built for sound. A speaker for the gods, a granic bell that's always ringing, even if no one's around to hear it. And maybe, just maybe, if you lie in the chamber long enough and hum just the right note, the pyramid will sing back. The mathematical mystery, pi, phi, and coincidence. Imagine building something so big, so heavy, so geometrically precise, that even 4,500 years later, it still makes mathematicians whisper, "Wait, what?" Welcome to the Pyramid of Numbers. Some say it's just a pile of blocks. Others say it's a mathematical revelation locked in limestone. Let's begin with pi. Not the kind with apples, the kind with circles. Take the perimeter of the pyramid's base, roughly 921.6 meters. Now divided by twice its height, which is about 146.6 meters before the top was lost. You get 3.1415. Close enough to pi to make any geometry teacher weep with quiet confusion. Then there's phi, the golden ratio, roughly 1.618, found in sunflowers, seashells, and now, apparently, stone triangles. If you divide the slant height of the Great Pyramid by half the base length, you get something remarkably close to 1.618. Accident? Design? Or just a really lucky guess? Some say the Egyptians embedded divine proportions into the pyramid structure, that it wasn't just a building, it was a message in math, an equation you can walk into and sleep beneath. Even the angles whisper secrets. Each face of the pyramid rises at 51.84 degrees, which gives it that perfect slope. Some believe this angle balances gravity with light. Others believe it just looks nice. Now consider this. The pyramid's base perimeter, when multiplied by 43,200, equals the equatorial circumference of the Earth. Its height, multiplied by the same number, equals Earth's polar radius. Who knew that? How? No satellite, no GPS, just stars, ropes, and infinite patience. Skeptics say these are just coincidences, numerical cherry-picking. You can find patterns anywhere if you stare long enough. But others argue, isn't that what the universe is? A pattern hidden in plain sight. Some researchers believe the pyramid encodes time, geometry, astronomy, and Earth's dimensions in stone. A permanent backup drive for civilization. No password required. So maybe the builders were poets, or priests, or very tired engineers. But they knew something silent, something precise. And they left it here, under the sun, for us to puzzle over just before sleep.
Napoleon's nap and the Psychic Pyramid. Close your eyes. Imagine you are Napoleon Bonaparte, short, ambitious, slightly sweaty. And one night in 1799, you decide to sleep inside the Great Pyramid. Yes, alone, in the king's chamber. You bring no guards, no torchbearers, no baguette. Just yourself and silence. The story goes, and yes, it's mostly legend, that Napoleon spent the night surrounded by granite and ancient air. And when he emerged the next morning, he looked pale, troubled, quiet. His aide asked, "What happened in there?" And Napoleon, the man who conquered Europe, simply said, "You wouldn't believe me," and never spoke of it again. Historians have debated the tale. Some say it's apocryphal. Others say it's true. But why does it persist? Because the idea is irresistible, that the pyramid holds psychic energy, that it isn't just stone, but a kind of resonant chamber, capable of unlocking visions, memories, truths too large for language. Over the years, many visitors have reported strange feelings inside the pyramid. Tingling, heat, a sense of being watched. Some speak of lucid dreams, others of pressure in the chest. And some, very calmly, mention hearing a hum. Researchers have studied the electromagnetic fields within the structure. One study from 2018 suggested that the pyramid may concentrate radio waves in its internal chambers. Science called it a curious electromagnetic effect. Mystics called it proof. In the 20th century, a movement called pyramidology emerged. Its followers claimed that simply sitting inside a pyramid could sharpen your mind, heal wounds, preserve fruit, sharpen razors, and perhaps show you the future. Experiments were done. Apples placed under pyramid-shaped frames lasted longer. Milk soured slower. Razor blades grew sharper. Or perhaps people just wanted to believe in sharpness without effort. Of course, there's no solid evidence. But there's something about those granite walls, the perfect angles, the centuries of silence, that makes even skeptics go quiet for a moment. So what did Napoleon see in the king's chamber? His own death? A vision of Europe on fire? Or just a very vivid dream brought on by too much sand and not enough wine? No one knows, and he never told. But for one night, the conqueror of nations lay still beneath 2.3 million blocks of stone. And perhaps he met something older than war, and softer than victory. The hidden room that wasn't so hidden. You would think, after 4,500 years, we would have found everything inside the pyramid. But in 2017, we found a room, and it had been there the entire time. They called it the Scan Pyramid's Big Void, a majestic name for something no one has seen. Not yet. The discovery came not from shovels, but from particles, muons, cosmic rays that pass through stone like thoughts through a nap. A team of scientists placed detectors inside the pyramid. And what they found was a strange emptiness above the grand gallery. A space at least 30 meters long, with no known access points. No stairs, no shaft, no signs. Just a void. A silence within silence. Some believe it's just a structural cavity, an empty pocket to reduce weight. Others believe it's something more. A hidden chamber, a secret archive, a forgotten burial, or a place never meant to be entered at all. Because the pyramid doesn't like to explain itself. It only offers shapes and shadows. Archaeologists have proposed drilling, sending in robots, but so far, no one has gone in. No one knows what's inside. And maybe that's the point. The Great Pyramid was once sealed, its passages blocked by granite plugs, its chambers hidden behind false doors. It was designed not just to protect what was inside, but to confuse those who looked. Some say this newly found space could be the real burial chamber of Khufu. Others believe it's where sacred relics were kept, or something even older than kings. There are stories, of course, old legends of secret books, of golden tablets, of scrolls that held the wisdom of Thoth, god of writing and magic. Or maybe it's empty, a room with no purpose, a blank page in stone. And maybe that's what keeps us curious. Because sometimes the most powerful thing inside a monument is a room that has never been touched by time or air or answers. A place where mystery still sleeps. Hieroglyphs that say, nothing useful. You run your hand along the wall. Cool stone,
hard lines, a surface meant to last forever. You expect to find something profound, a message from the past, a riddle, a warning, an ancient to-do list. Instead, nothing. The Great Pyramid of Giza, despite its scale, its fame, and its weight in stone, has no internal hieroglyphs, not in the chambers, not in the corridors, not even a sticky note saying, "Mind the sarcophagus." Compare that to the Pyramid of Unas, built a century later. It's covered floor to ceiling in spells, prayers, and poetic instructions for the soul's journey to the afterlife. A cosmic user manual. But Khufu? Silent. There are only a few painted marks inside the relieving chambers above the king's chamber. Names, crew notations, Team Friends of Khufu, or something like it. Most likely construction graffiti, scrawled in red ochre, then sealed away forever. So what does it mean? Did they forget to write? Or was the silence intentional? Some believe Khufu wanted mystery, a pyramid without words, without clues, a monument not to life, but to unknowing. Others believe the inscriptions were once there, carved in wood or painted on plaster, and simply lost to time. But stone, unlike parchment, does not forget. And this stone says almost nothing. That hasn't stopped people from reading into it. They study the angles, the slopes, the shadows. They look for codes, for measurements, for patterns, as if the pyramid itself is speaking, but in numbers instead of letters. And still, no clear voice. Some theorists claim the entire pyramid is a book written in architecture, a stone cipher meant to be solved when humanity is ready. But maybe there's nothing to solve. Maybe it's like a dream you forget the moment you wake up, beautiful, heavy, and full of meaning you'll never quite name. So we're left with cold corridors and quiet walls. And in that silence, our own thoughts echo louder. Maybe the builders didn't write anything down because they knew we'd never stop trying to read them anyway.
What's underneath? You've seen the outside, climbed the steps, imagined the kings. But what if the most important part of the pyramid is not above you, but beneath? Underneath the Great Pyramid lies a space carved straight into the bedrock. It's called the subterranean chamber, and no one agrees on what it was for. To reach it, you descend a narrow shaft, downward through ancient limestone, into silence. It smells of dust, and deep time, and questions. The chamber is crude, rough, unfinished. Unlike the polished granite above, this room feels like something that was started, but never completed. There's a rectangular pit in the center of the floor, too shallow for a burial, too deep to ignore. Some believe it was a false tomb, a decoy to fool grave robbers. Others think it was a symbolic womb, a place of rebirth, a portal to the underworld, an echo chamber for the soul. A few have argued it was a sacred well,
meant to fill with Nile water during annual floods, a mirror for the sky, a reflection of the stars in still underground silence. More recently, some have pointed to geological features beneath the plateau, caves, tunnels, possibly entire networks of chambers yet to be explored. There are legends, whispers really, that beneath the pyramid lies an older structure, something predating Khufu, a hall of records, or a library carved in darkness. No one knows for sure. The ground beneath the pyramid has not been fully excavated. Out of caution, out of respect, or perhaps out of fear. Because what if we dig and find nothing? What if the mystery ends? Or worse, what if we dig and find too much? So the subterranean chamber waits, empty, cool, quiet. It has no hieroglyphs, no offerings, just potential, like a blank page at the bottom of a very old book. And as you imagine it now, the weight of the entire pyramid pressing down from above, you realize maybe what's beneath the pyramid was never meant to be discovered. Maybe it was meant to hold the questions we weren't ready to answer.
The real secret. People had time, ramps, and too much sand. You've heard the theories. The stars, the sound, the secret rooms, power plants, alien blueprints, celestial snack storage. But now, at the edge of sleep, you wonder, what if the answer is simpler? What if the real secret of the Great Pyramid is not magic, or math, or mystery, but manual labor? Thousands of workers, not slaves, but skilled, paid laborers. Farmers in the off-season, artisans, engineers, stone pullers, and bread bakers, all working not under a whip, but under the sun. We found their homes, worker villages near the pyramids, with streets, bakeries, beer jars, and bones showing signs of healed injuries, evidence of care, of community. They moved 2.3 million blocks over the course of 20 years, block by block. They used sleds, dragged over damp sand to reduce friction. They used copper chisels and wooden rollers and the power of practice. And most importantly, they used ramps. Long, winding ramps, spiraling, stacked, not flashy, just effective. No lasers, no levitation, just people who woke up every day and moved rocks. Some archaeologists believe the construction of the pyramid was an act of national pride, a unifying project, a monument to Egypt itself, built not for the dead, but for the living, to prove what humans can do with coordination and purpose and time. Lots and lots of time. The real wonder is not that the pyramid was built. It's that people chose to build it, over decades, in the heat, just to leave behind something that outlasts them. So maybe the pyramid isn't a power source, or a prophecy, or a puzzle. Maybe it's a reminder that human hands, rough, calloused, and often tired, can still shape stone into something eternal. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most magical theory of all. Now close your eyes. Let the sand settle. Let the theories rest. And sleep, knowing that sometimes the most mysterious thing in the desert is the truth.